I've got some breaking news for you. Chris Christie is no longer the governor. So when the Democrats want to talk about Chris Christie, I got some news for you. You got an entire new system in New Jersey. It's called Murphyism. Now, Murphyism is a radical, anti-home rule form of government that is dangerous, in my judgment, to the future of this state. And I'm going to give you some very specific examples. I'm going to turn it over to this caucus, because the people in New Jersey must know that, must learn and must know that Murphyism is, in my judgment, a radical change in this state. Let's start off with a lawsuit filed by Gary Stein and a number of groups. That is a lawsuit that threatens parents and put them in a position where their child cannot go to the local school. Very simple. Governor Murphy fails to address this lawsuit. This lawsuit would set up a lottery. You'd have to win the lottery for your kid to stay in the local school. What mom and dad would support that policy? We have plenty of pro-choice, we have voucher programs, we have charter schools, we have options. Instead, it seems as if Governor Murphy chooses to side with groups that want the courts to run our schools. Courts running anything has been a disaster. So this Murphyism, which supports court-run schools, is a danger. Second, there is no doubt that Murphyism is an extreme tax and spend democratic approach to government. You can see that the Democratic legislature, clearly us in the Republican Party, are standing firm. We are not going to support the outrageous tax increases of Murphyism, and people in this state who are fleeing this state are as just as afraid of Murphyism as we are. Finally, and I'm going to turn it over to both the conference leader and to our leading advocate on court-imposed high-density housing. Not only will Murphyism force you out of your district, but he supports court-imposed high-density housing in the community. So what is Murphyism? It's loss of home rule to the point where planning boards and zoning boards won't decide issues as to housing. School boards will not decide issues as to school funding, as to who goes to those schools. And while he takes away home rule, he will tax most people out of the state. So let the people know today that Murphyism is the new New Jersey. It is an extreme, radical approach that even his own party doesn't support. We're here today to make sure that the people in this state know that Murphyism is firmly in place and a danger, in my judgment, to the future of this state.
You know, why are these extreme policies so dangerous? Because when you look at these issues, you recognize immediately that every one of them has a financial impact on the residents of our state. And that addresses the affordability issue of being able to stay here, right? Whether you look at the inability to address our affordable housing crisis here in New Jersey, whether you look at the inability to address our school funding issue here in New Jersey, or you just simply look at his proposal to raise taxes to the point where people can't afford to live here anymore. Every one of those issues has an impact on people's ability to remain here and work here. And when you start to hit a point where people realize that these issues are going to have a major impact on their pocketbook, you're going to see a sea change of opinion here in New Jersey, and that's coming. You know, I often wondered the last couple of weeks why there's not an outrage, right? And I thought to myself, you know, where's the outrage over these policies? And then I think it kind of hit me. I don't think people are focused yet on exactly what every one of these policies are going to mean to them financially. And over the next few months, you're going to see that, especially over the next month, as we finish out this budget cycle, if he's able to get a budget deal done by the end of June. People are going to begin to focus on these policy issues and the lack of direction that's coming out of the front office. And you are going to begin to see that frustration build. But I think it's starting now, and I think it's our responsibility as a caucus to begin to point it out and define it for the people that we represent. And I think you're going to see that outrage build and build and build.
I think the scariest part of what's going on right now is we are doubling down on the worst, most ineffectual policies which have gotten us into the fiscal crisis that this state is in. And rather than fix them, rather than sit down and have the discussions and have the hearings on affordability, rather than have the discussions on school funding, essentially, we've all been told we should all go home because the courts are going to now do our jobs. So instead of us actually trying to fix these problems, we're being asked to punt, vote on things like the bog turtle, and totally ignore the core issues in this state. So the new school lawsuit, we are doubling down on a failed funding system in this state, which has caused the unaffordability in our communities for homes. 70% of our property taxes in many of our suburban communities are going strictly to our schools because of the inequities in school funding. We have Asbury Park getting over $30,000 per student per year in state school aid. The town I live in, $455 per student per year. I mean, it's not even within a realm of equity. So what's ended up happening? A lot of people in my community, a lot of people who I represent can no longer afford their homes. They can't pay their mortgage payments and their property tax payments, which have escalated and skyrocketed. So what's ended up happening? You have groups like Fair Share Housing and the courts who have said, okay, it's no longer affordable for people to be in their homes. So guess what? We're going to force every suburban community now to have to build tens of thousands of high-density housing projects, most of which are actually fair market, and for a very small portion of affordable. 20%, in most instances, it's as low as 10%. And how are those being built? Primarily through pilot agreements, payment in lieu of tax agreements, which are exempting property taxes on those improvements and any money going to our schools, which creates an additional level of this problem. We are destroying our suburban communities. We're doing it without any discussion, any discourse. I was just at the League of the Conference of Mayors. I had mayors from all over this entire state, Republican, Democrat, Independent, begging the legislature to do their jobs, begging the legislature to provide some help. And now we're going to double down and say to our residents, your communities are going to be overbuilt. You're going to have high-density housing. We're going to take every park you have. We're going to build on it. Every farm you have, we're going to build on it. Your property taxes are going to go up because we refuse to do any reforms in the state. And guess what? For the privilege of that, your child's now going to be on a bus and sent an hour away pursuant to a lottery system to go to some school that's getting $28,000 per year per student. That's not going to be attributed to anything that you do. It's outrageous, and we need to stop it.
You know, I sat on the Budget Committee along with John DiMaio and Rob Clifton and Ned Thompson, and there is outrage, and there's outrage on both sides of the aisle. We have new funding initiatives with a failure to actually fund those things that we're constitutionally obligated to do. And we are hearing the outrage from our communities, from our mayors, from our citizens. Those who are paying attention, who see the numbers, are paying attention, and they know. And we have to be the voice for those people. And that's what we're going to continue to do. You know, we see movement of the Exxon settlement. That money was constitutionally dedicated for the cleanup of the environment. It's been moved into the general fund for the most part, except for $50 million of that. So those things that that Governor Christie was criticized for in the past, the same, and I'll call it shenanigans, are taking place now, and that's really unfortunate. And that we're watching this closely, and what we see is that our colleagues on the other side of the aisle in Budget Committee are also outraged because they know that it's their residents, their citizens, the citizens in their districts who cannot afford to live here. And they may argue that one study says that they're not moving out and one study says that they are, but the facts are they're moving out. And it's the high-end earners who are contributing to the tax base who are moving out. So we will continue the fight to have our voices heard, to make sure the public understands what's going on so that we can continue this fight to protect the taxpayers and the property owners in the state of New Jersey.
It's time for this governor and my colleagues across the aisle to take off those rose-colored glasses. More importantly, start to listen. And what they'll hear is the cries. And the cries are coming from not just the seniors who are forced to move out and not able to stay with the families and their grandchildren that they raised in their communities, but also to the millennials. And more importantly, the supposed group that he wants to protect, which is our middle class. They're fleeing this state. And to listen, to hear those cries, to open their eyes and see the tears from the seniors that are moving out. This is what we need to do, and I challenge our colleagues and this governor to be proactive. If they truly want to make a difference, work on legislation that will make a difference. Reduce the property taxes, not worry about the bog turtle.
If we want to sit down and talk about budget cuts, we could get the document out, and we could find places to cut that budget, I'll guarantee you. This all started three governors ago, when Governor McGreevey walked in the door with full control of the legislature. They raised taxes and spending like we never saw in the history of this state, and we're still paying for it today. The McGreevey-Cody-Corzine era damaged this state so badly that we have not recovered yet. And you know, a good executive knows how to plan for the future. I'm a former mayor. I know it's not to the extent of governor, but it's very similar. You look at your budget, you forecast out a year or two at least. We don't do that here. We did in municipality. So far, his plan shows let's raise spending by $2.7 billion in 1 year. Governor Christie went up $1.35 billion in 8 years. So twice what the previous governor went up in 8 years, we're going up in 1 year. $1.7 billion in new taxes. The same failed program that we went through 16 years ago. It's like deja vu all over again. A good executive also has to know how to react to things that happen under his leadership. And right now, this looming lawsuit could crush the system of education in New Jersey for the communities have invested in the way they want their school districts run. And he stands silent. Murphy stands silent on the issue and doesn't say, guys, in the legislature, I'm going to lay out this plan. I'm going to suggest this bill. We're going to address this issue. No, let's go cut a ribbon on a highway that was built before I was here. It looks good. The optics are great in the press. But the reality is this. A good executive would take on issues like COA and say, legislature, get me a plan to deal with this. I'll sign it. I'll sit down with you. We'll work out the details. He is MIA. In 6 months, the only thing we've heard about is higher taxes and more spending. And we also have COA looming over our head, school funding that is a train wreck in New Jersey. He said he would rework the plan. Well, let's rework it. If we're going to rework it, the schools boards have already put together their spending plans for this year based on the numbers they've been given. Why aren't we acting now? Where is he? I want to get a milk carton. I mean, it's time to lead.